Hi there, we're on our last lesson for this unit. This is on graphing quadratic functions. So a quadratic function, such as a equals s squared, is a function in which the greatest power of the variable is to the second power. Its graph is U-shaped, opening upward like this or downward like this. And that really depends upon whether it's a positive or negative value. So if it's a positive value, like a 2x squared, that's going to open upward like so. If it's a negative value, like negative 2x squared, then it's going to open up downward like so. Another couple points you can look at when looking with quadratic functions is if there's a number after the x squared part, that is still going to be your y-intercept. In this case here, the y-intercept is going to be at 0. If you look at the graph down below, you can see it starts here at 0. And this one here, the y-intercept is going to be at -3, and you can see it starts here at -3. So just by looking at the graph, we can tell a couple things right away. This one's going to have it's going to curve down because it's negative 2x squared, and it's going to have a maximum point at 0 right there. Curving down, maximum at 0. This one is going to be curving up because it's positive, and it's going to have a minimum at -3, which means your smallest y value is going to be -3 the whole way down. Okay? Now, in terms of graphing, then what you're going to want to do is, again, like before, select some points that you plug into the equation in order to find a y value and end up with an ordered pair. So you take a -2, for example, you plug it in the place of x, so you do -2 times 2 squared. It's important to do the squaring part first, right? So what is 2 squared? 2 times 2 is 4, and then you multiply 4 times -2 for a -8. And now you have an ordered pair of -2, 1, 2, -8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere down here, right? Okay, if you did -1 squared is +1. 1 times -2 is -2 though. So you have -1 comma -2, and that becomes a point right there. So you can see in this first one, you have this curve up to there, and because it's just an x squared value, that same curve is going to reflect across the other way. Look at our values. At -2 and +2, our y values are -8 and -8. Here at -1 and 1, our values are -2, -2. It should always be like that if you're doing your math right, because it's going to reflect across or over the y-axis each time. And again, look at the next one, 1 and 1, -2 and 2, and there's our y-intercept, and our, in this case here, our minimum value of -3. So you're going to pick a couple points and plot them, and then draw your graph. Do you need to do a total of 5 points? You don't need to. I'll show you here. You probably can get away with just a couple because all you're doing is just trying to get a feel for how this is going to flow. Okay, so in the first one, for example, our y-intercept, we don't have one. So we know that our point here, we're going to have a point when x is 0, y is going to be 0. We also know it's positive, so we're going to be curving this direction like so. So that becomes our minimum value right there. So let's plug in a -1 first of all. When x is -1 squared, what is y? -1 times -1 is +1. 2 times 1 is 2. So when x is -1, y is equal to 2. So there's our first point. Now let's do +1. When y is equal to +1, we have 1 squared, which is 1. So 2 times 1 is 2, and we're going to be right there. So those are my points I can start with. If I wanted to do a second point, I certainly could, right? I could put a -2 in there, and -2 squared is going to be a -2 times -2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I have a point here at 8. And then because I'm reflecting over the y-axis, I could have another point here at 8 as well. So my graph would look like a curve like this, just like that. And that's my graph for 2x squared. Okay? So when we take a look at a -0.5x squared, again, my y-intercept is at 0, so we're going to put a point right there. Because it's a negative in front of the x squared, we know it's going to be curving down, like so. So let's plug in a negative 1. So a negative 0.5 times negative 1 squared. Negative 1 squared is going to be simply 1. 1 times negative 0.5 is going to be negative 0.5. So at negative 1, we are going to be at negative 0.5. So about negative and a half right there, which means that positive 1 will also be at about negative 1.5. Okay? If I did a negative 2 real quick, or even a positive 2, so 0.5 times 2 squared. 2 squared is 4. So what is 4 times 0.5? Well, that ends up being 2. So at 2, we're going to be at 1, 2. And at 2, we're at 2. So a little bit wider kind of curve here. And that's about what that looks like. Something along those lines, like so. Okay? This next one here, we can see we have a y-intercept at negative 1. So I have a point right there. We know it's curving up because it's positive. So when x is equal to 1, 1 squared is 1 minus 1 is 0. And then the same on the other side. We're going to mirror it there. If I do 2, 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. So we go 4. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. And after 2, we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And those become my points. Something like that, right? So when x is equal to 1, y equals 0. When x equals 2, y equals 3, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea of what you're doing today. You're going to be just using some points. I'm using negative 1, 0, and 1 primarily. Remembering that these are going to be equal to each other. If you want a second one, you could do negative 2 and a 2. And again, remembering they're going to be equal to each other. So you don't have to do the math twice. You can just do it once and then reflect it across the y-axis. Just looking at your y-intercept, deciding whether it curves up or curves down. And you'll be set to go. Okay? So give that a shot there for your last lesson for this unit. See you back here in a minute. Alright, let's take a look here. So the first one, we don't have a y-intercept, so we know we're going to have a point here at 0, 0. When I take a value like negative 1, we go negative 4 times negative 1 squared. Negative 1 squared is simply 1. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. So at the value negative 1, y is equal to 1, 2, 3, negative 4. And then we can reflect that right over there to know that's going to be where it is at positive 1, the same thing. And that's enough for us to draw our downward shaped curve because it's a negative value there. Number 3, we see our y-intercepts at 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. We know it's curving up because it's positive. So when x is equal to 1, we have 1 squared plus 4. 1 squared is 1 plus 4 is 5. So at 1, we're going to be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there, which means on the other side, negative 1 will also be at 5. If I wanted to do a 2, I could do 2 squared plus 4. 2 squared is 4 plus 4 is 8. So at 2, we're going to be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 right up here. And again, reflect that on the other side there. And then draw my curvy line, my U, like so. And there's number 3. For number 5, we can see we have a y-intercept at 3. 1, 2, 3. We can also see we're going to be curving down because it's a negative value there. So let's put in a 1 first of all. So negative 1 squared is plus 3 is going to be 1 plus 3 is 4. So at 1 we're going to be at 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 1, that seems weird, doesn't it? Negative 1, let's check it out again. So negative 1 squared plus 3 should be curving down. So 1 plus 3 is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That doesn't seem right. But let's keep going here. Let's see. What am I missing? Negative value should curve down. We're at positive 3, but it's not curving down. Oh, well, that's because, sorry, my bad. We have to curve, it's a negative x squared plus 3, which means we're going to be a 1 squared plus 3. 1 squared is still 1, so it's still minus 1 plus 3, which is positive 2. So you gotta be real careful about that minus sign. I had to think that through just a little bit, but again, because I knew it was curving down, just had to rethink what I was doing there. That makes more sense. Let's try it with a 2. So minus 2 squared plus 3, right? 2 squared is 4, so we end up with a minus 4 plus 3 is a minus 1. Alright, so we have 2 and we're minus 1 and minus 1 there. That works. So it's good to kind of have an idea of what this should look like that, before you graph it to make sure you don't make a mistake like I was about ready to do. That happens, no problem. Number 7. We have a y-intercept at minus 3. 1, 2, 3. We know we're curving up because it's positive. So let's put in a 1 value here. So 2 times 1 squared minus 3. 1 squared is 1, times 2 is 2. 2 minus 3 is minus 1. So we have a minus 1 there and a minus 1 there. If I did 2, I would have 2 times 2 squared minus 3, which is 4. 4 times 2 is 8, minus 3 is 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there, and 5 there, curving it up just like we said, and that's what number 7 looks like. Number 9, value at negative 2, 1, 2. We know we're curving down because of that right there. So let's put in a positive 1. So 1 squared is 1, times negative 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 minus 2 is a minus 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That keeps us curving down. That looks good. So we're going to curve down just like so. Number 11. We have a positive 3, which means we're up here. 1, 2, 3. Not sure why that graph is starting there, but it did. Let's go with a minus 1. So negative 3, or positive 1, sorry, squared plus 3. So 1 squared is 1. 1 times minus 3 is minus 3. Plus 3 is 0. So at 1, we're going to be at 0. At minus 1, we're going to be at 0. If I did a 2 real quick, I do negative 3 times 2 squared plus 3. That's 4. 4 times minus 3 is minus 12. Plus 3 is minus 9. So we'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, somewhere down here. This is a pretty steep curve like so. Number 13, we have a point at negative 1. We're going to be there. We also know we're curving down because it's negative, right? And so when we put a 1 in there, we have negative 1 squared minus 1. 1 squared is 1. Minus 1 minus 1 is going to be minus 2. 1, 2, and 1, 2. If I did a 2, I do 2 squared, put a minus in front of there. It's 4. Minus 4 minus 1 is minus 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this, and like this. And we're curving down. It all looks great. And one last one. Again, we're at minus 2, 1, 2. We can see it's positive, so we're going to be curving up. Alright, and so let's plug in a value. 3 times 1 squared minus 2. 1 squared is 1, so 3 plus 2 is 5. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there, and 5 there. And I'm going to leave it just like that. If I do another point, I won't have space in my graph. Alright, that's really it for quadratics. Alright, so take some time with that. Be careful sometimes when you're squaring that you're squaring the x value and not the negative in front of it, because that changes things completely. That's about it. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.